Good afternoon. Welcome to Farm Credit Illinois' second program as part of our Ag Minded Hour webinar series. Just as a refresher for maybe some of those you that are joining us for the first time today, the intent of this Ag Minded Hour series is to offer some timely topics and information that's easily digestible over the noon hour while you take your lunch or while you go about your day. You could call it a little food for thought, I guess. So let's go ahead for the sake of time and just dive right into today's topic. We have Wyatt Scheiding. He is Farm Credit Illinois' Vice President of Information Security. Wyatt has spent 10 years in the info security field, specifically in the areas of finance, healthcare, and telecommunications. He joined Farm Credit in 2020 and has since played an integral role in tightening our information security both internally and externally. And we are very appreciative of Wyatt. Wyatt, with that, I will turn it over to you and give you presenter privileges. Thank you.
Okay. You should be able to see my screen, correct?
We can.
Outstanding. Minor correction, as much as I would love to be 37 years old again, I'm 47. I've been in the industry for 20 years. I was looking at my slide notes, and as much as I wish it was 10 years, it has actually been 20. So I've spent a long time working in this field. So thank you again for having me today. I actually was born and raised here in Central Illinois, and my wife and I live just north of Mahomet. We have 3 boys, and usually outside of work, I'm as far away from a computer as I can be. Preferably on a beach somewhere would be great. It is more challenging to present in a virtual format, so please feel free to chime in any questions, as Amy had said. Happy to answer those as they come up. So for a quick overview on what we're going to cover today, I want to make sure we can define what cybersecurity means. And the topics today are not going to be super advanced. These are fundamental steps you can take to protect your information online. I want to talk about some current security trends. I want you to understand the motivation behind bad actors and cyber attacks. I want to make sure you understand the value of your own information and why bad actors want access to it. I want you to consider areas you may be vulnerable to attack. And then we'll talk about some basic cyber hygiene steps you can take, and then when and how to report cybercrime should it occur. So what is cybersecurity anyway? Cybersecurity is the art of protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use, and the practice of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your information. So when we talk about confidentiality, we want to make sure that we restrict unauthorized disclosures of your information to those who do not need to have the right to access it. We want to make sure we protect the integrity of your information so it's not modified in an unauthorized way. Someone can modify your information, such as your bank account number. They can then transfer funds away from your actual bank account to a malicious bank account that bad actors will access. We want to make sure that your information is available when you need it. So the CIA triad, we call it confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So what are some current trends and topics to consider for the average consumer? Not too long ago, most of your information will be stored on a single computer, maybe 1 or 2 computers. And then all of a sudden, the advent of mobile device technology came out. Now you're carrying information around on a mobile device. And then cloud services exploded. So cloud services such as Gmail, OneDrive, Microsoft 365, Dropbox, etc. Now your information is not just in a single device or 1 or 2 devices, it's everywhere, all over the place, what they call the cloud. And though there are great benefits to the cloud, we've also increased the attack surface. So as opposed to protecting 1 device or 2 devices in your home network, you now have to consider protections of your online accounts and where all of your data may be stored in different areas. A huge concern nowadays is ransomware. And this is really just a new form of malware or newish form of malware where bad actors will encrypt your files or your data or lock your computer and then demand you pay a ransom to retrieve that back. So if all of your information for like your family pictures, for instance, was stored in the cloud, maybe in Google Pictures or the iCloud, and someone was able to encrypt those files or lock you out of that account, or maybe they're stored on your computer and you don't have a cloud backup and someone locks all those files, how much would you be willing to pay to get 15, 20 years worth of family pictures back? The bad actors will not ask you for millions and millions of dollars, but they'll be more reasonable because they know they can get a price that you will pay. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency reported in February of 2022 that it is aware of ransomware incidents against 14 of the 16 US critical infrastructure areas. So, and food and agriculture is one of those areas. It's not just things such as nuclear. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center reported 2,084 ransomware complaints from January to July 31st of 2021, and this represents a 62% year-over-year increase in ransomware overall. Keep in mind, phishing is still very prevalent. According to the anti-phishing workgroup's activity trends for the fourth quarter of 2021, phishing attacks hit an all-time high in 2021. So phishing is the malicious activity of someone using email or text messaging to get you to do something you shouldn't do, click on a link or open a file or provide credentials that you shouldn't. We'll cover more of that later in this presentation. And keep in mind the Internet of Things. This is, again, a newish concept that's been around for a little while, but network connected objects able to collect and exchange data using embedded sensors. That's a fancy way of saying all these simple little devices that you may have in your home or putting in your home, smart refrigerators, thermostats, fire alarms, door locks, etc. Those are all now network connected where they used to not be. So it exposes the attack surface, and many of these devices, when they're put online, are not put online or manufactured in a secure way. So I'll pause really quick to see if there's any questions on those 4 topics for our current security trends. Okay, so just to highlight some attacks targeting agriculture, JBS Foods press release from June 9th of 2021, JBS USA today confirmed it paid the equivalent of $11 million in ransom in response to a criminal hack against its operations. The agriculture machinery producer AGCO was hit with a ransomware attack on May 5th of 2021, and threat actors initiated ransomware attacks against 6 grain cooperatives during last fall's 2021 harvest, followed by 2 additional attacks earlier in 2022, potentially disrupting the supply of seeds and fertilizers, according to the FBI. So as we look at the gambit of everything that is going on in the information security space and cybersecurity space, there are direct and immediate threats to not just large companies, but also individuals. And we'll cover more of this here in a little bit. But the attacks against larger companies and larger organizations, though they're directed at those organizations, there's a trickle-down effect. They end up impacting not just those big organizations, but consumers as well. So what is the motivation of bad actors? Well, many times it's financial gain. Ransomware nets has increased, I think the profits are like $1 billion each year. So $1 billion with a B in ransomware gains. Cybercrime as a service can bring as much as 1.6 billion annually. And where does this information go? Where does this money go? Well, it's generally used to fund terrorist organization or organized crime. Many times people will do this to recognition amongst peers. Who's the best of the best? You know, people trying to get their chops in the hacking community and see what they can do and who they're competing with. There are hacktivists and protesters. Hacktivism is just a way to say hacker groups have gotten together to attack other organizations for political reason. So notable attacks would be the WikiLeaks organization publishing the emails of the Democratic National Convention from 2016. Organization called LulzSec on the Sony LulzSec, sorry, it's hard to pronounce. But they launched an attack against Sony in 2011 to demonstrate the weaknesses in security that Sony had in their organization. And an organization called Anonymous did a distributed denial of service attack against the Church of Scientology in 2008. So a distributed denial of service, just so you understand, that's when they take over many hundreds or thousands of computers and make those computers talk to a single system to bring it offline. And then there are state-sanctioned actors. So this would be North Korea, China, or other state countries that are attacking other countries and sponsoring hacking groups. From our point of view, when we think about hacking from an average consumer, we wouldn't necessarily be the target of a specific attack, specifically from a nation state. But from a consumer perspective, we would be attacked with what's known as an opportunistic attack or a wide net attack, where bad actors are trying to do something across a huge audience and see what they can lure in, and I'll cover that more here in a little bit. So let's talk about some common misconceptions. So a common misconception is that cybercrime only targets large companies and networks. I just briefly talked about that here, but it's not just that. Though large companies and networks are the target of maybe large-scale attacks and those seeking to retrieve millions of dollars, we as the average consumer, we see phishing attacks, we see social engineering attacks, we see fraudulent attacks from our phones. These small-scale attacks, though, might seem trivial, when you collect them over the millions of people that they hit, can really gain a tremendous amount of money. Another misconception is that devices, when purchased, are secure out of the box. So if you purchase something from Best Buy or your local IT firm or whoever sells your electronics, it's not necessarily going to be secure out of the box. There are default passwords that need to be changed. There are configurations that might need to be adjusted. So just keep that in mind as you put new devices online. Most cyber attacks are opportunistic in nature, as I already referred to, and can occur on any network, large or small. And then make sure we prioritize technical solutions over safe habits. Make sure you prioritize safe habits over technical solutions. One of the questions that is often asked is, what's the best product? What should I use to secure my computer? What antivirus or what malware protection, et cetera? And the honest answer is any product is better than no product, and try and think more securely with safe habits that we're going to cover in this presentation than applying a specific product to be a silver bullet for all of the hacks that may come through, because there's just no such thing. The best defense overall is just general awareness. Okay, now we're going to talk about your information overall, because many people say, well, my information is not that valuable. Why would someone want this type of information? So with your credit card information, if someone has access to that, they can certainly make purchases that are not authorized, and they can withdraw funds from your accounts. If you have your debit card and you use that as a credit card or your form of payment, if someone has your debit card, then they withdraw the funds out of the account and you have no access to money until the bank refunds it. Now, banks have gotten very fast at doing this, they're very good at doing that. But if you're going to be making online purchases, just keep in mind it may be better off to use a credit card versus a debit card, but that's just food for thought. Your protected health information or medical information. If someone has access to your medical information, they might be able to receive prescriptions that you didn't authorize. They might be able to buy medical devices and then resell them. They might submit fraudulent claims against your insurance using your information. And then your personally identifiable information, all sorts of uses here. Open a new credit card or loan, open new utility accounts under your name. They can obtain a mobile phone. They can open a bank account and write bad checks on your name. Obtain a new driver's license or ID, potentially use your information in the event of arrest. One of the things that's been fairly recent in the news is what's called SIM swapping with mobile providers. So if I have enough of your personally identifiable information, and then I can call your cellular provider and say, hey, I'm you, and I have lost my phone. Can you please transfer my information to this new phone? And that's called a SIM swap. And that can be very dangerous in the sense that now someone has assumed your mobile number and they can use that to beat the multi-factor authentication, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. For your tax information, someone can file a fraudulent tax return. And from your bank account information, obviously false bills, money transfers, etc. So there's all sorts of uses for your information on the black market. Bad actors will absolutely take advantage of and use. And we're going to talk some more about why would they want access to your computer, your mobile device, and your email accounts here shortly. So I'll pause really briefly and just see if there's any questions so far. Okay. Now, when we think about your information that we just covered and why it's valuable, let's consider, where is it? Where does it exist? Data is everywhere, but consider what you can control and apply basic security practice for each area that we'll talk about here shortly. Where is data and what is on your personal computers? What type of data do you store on mobile devices and what do you use to access with your mobile device? For your home networks, a lot of times we just buy what we need from the store and we put it online and we leave all the defaults in place. Where do you store account credentials? How do you store account credentials? What do you use to access email and social media and cloud services, etc.? And then for your physical documents, what do you do with them when you're done with them? Do you throw them in the trash? Do you shred them? Do you burn them? So just things to consider about where the data exists, and now that we understand the value of data, what steps can we take to protect it in these different areas? So before we get too far into protecting computers and mobile devices, et cetera, I want to take a quick focus on passwords. So the best thing we can do is create a strong password. And I know passwords are the bane of everyone's existence. Usually we use one that we can't remember what it is the next time we log in. We've got 35 different passwords for 35 different websites, and it's just a nightmare to try and manage these. So here's some general tips that could help. So one thing to keep in mind, please make sure we use strong passwords. Do not create passwords based on personal information. So if you're creating a password that uses your anniversary and your first name, last name, bad actors can absolutely look at social networks and obtain that type of data. And they'll start to use those in combination to try and guess your passwords. Those great Facebook surveys are always great, like, hey, where did you grow up, and what street did you grow up on, and what's your maiden name, etc. These absolutely can be used to guess what passwords may be comprised of, as well as the password reset questions that may be used on different websites. Make sure that the password as long as possible. 8 characters minimum, the longer the better. And do not use dictionary readable words for your password. Again, there are brute force attacks or dictionary attacks that can guess those very, very quickly. Do not use the same passwords for every website. I know that's a challenging one because that means I have to remember a different password across the board, but you can use a password manager to assist with that. In the presentation here, you see I have a sentence that says, please do not use the same password across all applications. And in parentheses, there's the first letter of each word in that sentence. So it's a little acronym. And you can use your favorite verse, your favorite song, your favorite piece of poetry, or something that's important to you, or favorite phrase. You can create a nice acronym like that that's long and complex and easy for you to remember. And then when you go to visit a specific website or application, you can actually put in the first 2 letters of that website in front of that password. So in this particular example, if I were going to visit Amazon, I would put AM in front of that password. Then if I was going to visit, say, Chase Bank, I would put CH in front of that password. And then if I was going to visit Netflix, I would put NE in front of that password. What that does is you have the same core password, but you have a different modifier on each one that makes a cryptographically different password for each website that you visit. Because what will happen, and here's a good example, if anyone shares their Netflix password with someone else, that person now has access to that Netflix account, which is maybe okay, but they know what your email address is and they know what password you use for Netflix. So if you use that same exact password across multiple applications, they could potentially log into those other applications. And that's exactly what bad actors will do. If they get a hold of your email address and a password combination, they have tools where they can test hundreds or thousands of websites at one time to see what else they can log into. So if you do have one password compromised and you're using a secure password that's different across all websites, the blast radius of the attack will be very small. It's only going to impact that which they accessed. Next, please do not save passwords in plain text. Many people will put a notepad on their computer, they'll write it down on a piece of paper, they'll save it in a Word document, they'll have notes on their phone. Again, I refer back to password managers. Use something along those lines that secures those passwords and keeps them encrypted. Do not let your computer browser remember your passwords for you. I know that's very convenient, but if your computer would be taken over or someone were to have access to your computer, they could then access everything you remember the password for. Strongly recommend the use of multi-factor authentication wherever possible, and then using an authenticator app versus text messaging. And I'll pause on this one for just a moment. So multi-factor authentication is what happens when you go to log into a website and you get a second validation, either in the form of a text message or something on your phone that validates who you are. And sometimes that can be a text message or an email that sends your email account, or maybe you have an app like Google Authenticator on your phone for that second factor of authentication. So highly recommend, especially for sensitive financial transactions or anywhere that you want to keep private. So, all right. And just consider, if you currently have different accounts across the cloud or different websites and you use the same password, now would be a good time to go through and start creating different passwords for each and maybe looking at a password manager. And the only advice I have for a password manager is it's only as secure as your cybersecurity hygiene.
Wyatt, can you explain or give some examples of a password manager? And then also, you mentioned not using notes on your phone. You can set notes and things with Face ID. What is your with the use of Face ID? Is that still strongly discouraged if you were to use like the Notes app on your phone and have it set to lock and only open with Face ID? Just a couple of questions. So explaining password manager, giving some examples, and the Face ID option.
Okay, so from a password manager, one that I can refer to is LastPass, and I don't really want to say, be an advocate for one over the other. There's lots of different password managers out there, but what they are is they're a secure way to store your passwords. So it's an app that you would install on your phone or a website that you would visit where you store all of your passwords, and then that application itself is protected by a strong password or maybe two-factor authentication. LastPass has some capabilities that lets you, if you will, single sign-on into an account, but I don't want to get too deep into that. Really what I want to refer to is just the safe practice of using an application that will store your passwords for you and then provide them for you when you need access to them. So they are then protected with a password and a strong form of authentication. From a Face ID perspective, so I'm trying to think of an example. So I have a note that I'm making on my phone, but my phone itself is protected with Face ID or face recognition or maybe biometrics with my fingerprints. I understand you're securing the device, but if your phone itself becomes compromised and a bad actor can compromise your phone remotely with a malicious application, they could potentially exfiltrate that information or send that information somewhere else. So if the file itself is not encrypted or protected, there is still a risk of losing that information. So one vector absolutely is just theft of the device, and you can protect your device with your biometric and your PIN and making sure that someone just can't open it up and look at it. But if the device itself becomes infected, then you could potentially lose data that way, especially if it's like a laptop, maybe an Android.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk about our personal computers. Why are computers valuable to bad actors? Well, there's a few items here, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on each. Bad actors can use your computer for their own purposes. If they can take it over, it becomes theirs. Now they can use it for whatever they want. So they could potentially use your computer as a malicious web server to distribute other malware, different pirated software, spam, adult content, etc. Basically doing things with your computer that you're not authorizing and allowing people to touch and access your computer that you didn't authorize and putting content on your computer that you may not want on there. They could use your computer as a malicious email server to send out additional spam, other scams. They can harvest your email contacts. They will compromise your computer and turn it into what's known as a bot, and that bot is then used to execute attacks against other computers. So if I, as a bad actor, have compromised, say, 100 or 150,000 different computers with a piece of malware, and now I control them, I can then have those computers reach out and try and talk to a single system at one time. That's referred to as a distributed denial of service. And if you have enough computers sending enough information to a specific website or application, it could potentially bring that website down. So that's what we call distributed denial of service. They can use your computer as a hopping point against other computers, and they'll use your computer to attack other computers. So I would maybe take over 15, 20, 30 different computers, and then I would hop through each one, and then I would launch an attack for maybe the 30th. It makes it very, very difficult to trace where that hacking activity is coming from. Bad actors will also use your computer and your computer resources for crypto mining, really just using your CPU to run algorithms to harvest crypto or Bitcoin or that type of stuff. If a bad actor does compromise your computer, they're maybe going to put a keylogger on there. They're going to record every keystroke that you take on that computer and then have access to any passwords that you put on there if you're logging into any different websites. If they get access to your computer, they might use it as a hostage attack. Again, we talked about ransomware as a form of hostage attack. You might see fake antivirus pop up on your computer, and then when you click on that, it tells you to do something else and installs more malware, and then they will say, well, we will remove this for X dollars. If you pay us this much money, then we'll take this off. And again, they might take over your accounts. If they have a keylogger on there and they take over your accounts, they'll change a password to your Gmail, and then maybe for $500, $1,000, they'll give you that password back. And then webcam exploitation is another one. If a bad actor controls your computer, they could potentially see what's on the webcam. They could turn it on, they could turn it off without your knowledge. And obviously, if they take over your computer, there's data exfiltration concern. Your information, as we already covered, is very valuable. So if I have access to what you do all of your work on, I will do everything I can to compromise that system and bring all the data that I can see to me. So what are the different ways people can attack and get access to your computer? Well, it starts with phishing emails. And I'll cover this just a little bit. Let's talk about phishing in general. I'm not sure if everyone is super familiar with it. I think everyone probably is, but I'll just pause for a little bit and I'll talk about phishing. So you should see I'm going to move something from Microsoft onto my keyboard. I'm actually going to paste this link into the chat. You can go here and for further information on phishing. But how can we spot a phishing email? And really, what is a phishing attack? Phishing attack is when a bad actor is going to send you an email, and that email is going to try and get you to do something that you shouldn't do. Provide credentials, click on a link, open a file that you shouldn't open. And then those will then compromise your system or they'll compromise your accounts in some way. So how can you spot a phishing message when it comes in? Typically, a phishing email will have an urgent call to action or a threat. Phishing is just a form of social engineering. If I can get you to react out of emotion, you're more likely to do something in haste and hurry and do something that you wouldn't normally do if you were thinking rationally. If the email said something along the lines of you win $40 million in the lottery, congratulations, you might be very excited. Or it might be, say, one of your loved ones is hurt very badly, you need to click on this to fill out a form so we can treat them, or something like that. So just keep in mind, these are going to resort to urgent call to action or threats. If you don't give me this type of information, if you don't click on this link, if you don't go here right now, we're going to expose all of your information online, something like that. First time or infrequent senders, be on the lookout for those. If you have never received an email from the specific, like whoever's sending the phishing email to you, be cautious of that. Spelling and bad grammar. If you see an email that just is not crafted well, it has bad grammar, that's usually a sign that's not been crafted in English and may be the sign of a phishing attack. Generic greetings, so it may not address you personally. So typically businesses that you work with or are part of, they're going to address you by name. A generic greeting such as dear sir or everyone or something like that may be a sign of a potential phishing attack. And then mismatched email domains. If you get an email that looks like it comes from Wyatt Scheiding, me, but then you look at the actual email address, it might come from some weird Gmail address and doesn't look like it comes from me at all. Dead giveaway that that's a phish. And then suspicious links or unexpected attachments. Again, if you're not expecting an email that has an attachment from someone, don't open the attachment. If it comes from someone that you know, you can actually just reach out and call them and say, hey, did you mean to send me this attachment? Is it safe to open? And then if there's some sort of suspicious link, remember you can hover over a link. And here you can see the example that I have set. There's a hover and it shows you where that link is going. If that little option over the hover hand does not match the link that's provided, or it doesn't go to a legitimate website, then it's most likely going to be a phish. You can check these links on Android and on iOS by doing the long press on those links. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about phishing for those that may be new to it and just wanted some ideas on how to detect one. Is there any questions when it comes to that? Perfect. So phishing emails, that's going to be one area that a bad actor will try and compromise your computer. They'll try and get you to open something. Maybe you go to a malicious website on accident. There's something where you're maybe on the News Gazette website or you're on some other website and an ad pops up and you click on that ad, but maybe that ad goes to a malicious website because the ad agency has been taken over. I've actually seen that happen. Infected software. Make sure any software that you install on your computer is from a trusted source. If you're trying to download or use hacked software, many times people will put bad software in there to try and take over your computer. An exposed network. So if you're traveling and you're out in the airport or somewhere that has public Wi-Fi, there's no guarantees that that network is safe and that the systems on that network are not trying to exploit or attack your computer. that goes right into remote connections. So if I'm on an unsafe network and I have the ability for people to remote into my computer turned on, I want to make sure that that is not possible. Turn off any remote connections like PC Anywhere or something like that you may have running. Infected USB devices. Where I used to work, we actually had a situation where an employee was doing a presentation and they plugged in their personal USB device to a corporate laptop, and it triggered all sorts of warnings because it was infected with ransomware. And then theft. Obviously, someone can steal your computer. If you don't have that computer password protected, then anyone who takes it has access to all the information there within. So when we think about ways in which to protect a computer, here's some common mitigations. Make sure your operating system is up to date. If you're still running Windows 95, 98, XP, etc., it's time to upgrade. Make sure you get to an up-to-date operating system that is supported by the vendor, including Apple, iOS, etc. Make sure you patch and patch often. Turn on automatic updates. So if you are running a Windows or Apple system, make sure your auto updates are enabled and you install frequently and often. Make sure you patch all of your software as well. So it's not just your operating system patches, but if you're running Adobe Acrobat or other different applications, make sure you run patches and system updates for everything on your computer. So anytime your computer phone says there's an update available, it's a good time to say yes. So again, we mentioned install only trusted software. Make sure that software is from a reputable source. Make sure we have safe web browsing and email usage. Consider using a personal VPN while traveling. So safe browsing, what do I mean by this? It can be a touchy subject, but in general, don't go to hacker websites. Don't go to websites that may be of ill repute. Make sure you're surfing and navigating only those websites that are trustworthy. Make sure you're running up-to-date antivirus and malware, and make sure those are updated as often as possible. Make sure you enable your personal firewall. So when I talked about remote connections earlier and the attack vector, using that personal firewall helps to mitigate that threat. There are services that are listening on different ports on your computer, not to get technical, but if you enable that firewall, it's going to block any remote inbound connectivity to those, which is a good thing. Use caution when using public Wi-Fi. We talked about that just a little bit. Make sure that when you're somewhere like Starbucks or the airport, that you're using a VPN service or a personal VPN software that can tunnel your traffic and keep it encrypted and safe. Make sure you back up your data. This is especially important from a ransomware or hostage takeover situation. So if your computer is taken over and all of your files and all of your family pictures or all your small business information is on there, what do? You can use remote backup services such as the Microsoft Cloud or OneDrive. You can use Google Drive. You can use Backblaze or something like that to back up your files and information. And if you do become compromised, if your system does become compromised and you're concerned about something, make sure to notify the financial institutions that you do business with that you've had a hack. At least put them on guard and freeze accounts where you may need to freeze accounts. And I'll pause. I want to circle back to phishing just one moment. There is a difference between phishing and spam. Spam is just general marketing garbage. These are things that you get from Kohl's, Best Buy, or Bass Pro Shop, whoever you've done business with and submitted your email to in the past, and they're trying to get you to buy more services, keep in touch with their products, et cetera, et cetera. Many people, they'll want to click the unsubscribe link that's in the bottom of those emails. You can certainly do that, but what we found is that when you do that, you click that unsubscribe link, and those businesses become aware that that is a live and active email address that they sent it to. And then they may not send you information anymore, but they're going to resell that email address as a live email, and they'll resell it to other companies, and now your spam will actually increase over time. So you can just block the sender of that in your email client as opposed to unsubscribing to limit the amount of spam you may get in the future. So spam it's benign overall. It's not malicious in nature. It's not fraudulent. Phishing is the fraudulent activity of trying to get you to do something you shouldn't do to commit a crime or get funds. So I'll pause just a moment to see if there's any questions on the personal computer side of the house.
Wyatt, one question. So you talked about some of these mitigations, and the last one you mentioned was notifying your financial institution. Is there anything else that should be done? So for instance, your accounts are taken over, they have your password and they want money for it. And you may be going to cover this, but do you pay the hacker? Do you know, is there an organization that you notify, or what are the steps that you should take if you find yourself in this situation that your personal computer has been taken over or hacked?
So to summarize, just real brief, so let's say your computer's been infected with malware. The first thing we want to do is make sure that system is cleaned out. So you don't have suspicion that your accounts have been taken over, you don't have suspicion there's malicious activity from your data, but there's just a virus or something going on. So you can run your antivirus cleaner, clean it out. I would recommend taking it to a professional to have them do it if you're not comfortable doing that yourself. Now, if the scope of the infection is larger, maybe you are afraid that your Gmail account has been taken over, you would need to contact Gmail and say there's been a fraudulent activity on your account, someone has taken the account over, and then file the process with them. And that could be time consuming, but that's the next step you should take. If you have concerns that other accounts have been taken over, that's why I talked about notifying your financial institutions if you have a larger hack. Make sure your financial institutions are aware, put freezes on your account where necessary. And then up to and including, and this is a proactive step you can take. Again, this is a Wyatt Scheiding recommendation, not a Farm Credit Illinois recommendation. But it's okay to freeze your credit in all 3 credit agencies. You can do that today, and it's free. And it's very easy to do. And then you can unfreeze it should you need someone to do a credit check on you in the future. So going back to kind of square one, if your computer becomes infected, make sure it gets cleaned. Again, this is my personal recommendation. I would wipe it and start over from factory default just to be super safe. Again, you can take it to, it seems a bit extreme, but you can take it to a professional to have them do that. If someone is holding your information ransom, so you have a ransomware, someone has your accounts taken over, do you pay? That's the big question. The FBI would recommend that you do not, because that just encourages that activity from happening again in the future. It's easy to say that when you haven't lost 20 years worth of your family pictures or 8 years worth of your business information. So this is why people do pay. The recommendation is you shouldn't, but I can completely understand why someone's in that situation would. So a compensator for that is make sure you have backups available. So back up your files and data and make sure they're available offline somewhere where a bad actor can't get to those as well. Does that help answer the question?
That does. That was great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, move on to the next. And you're going to see some similarities throughout. So why are mobile devices valuable to bad actors? Very similar to what we just saw. Bad actors will put key logging on your mobile device so they can then perform account takeovers. They may be able to get access to your corporate accounts. If you have, say, a corporate email that you're using to check with your mobile device and you're not using like a secured platform provided by your company, then it's potential that the bad actors could access that information. Multi-factor authentication exploitation or new account setup. So if I have taken over your mobile device in some fashion and I can get information off that mobile device, I'm going to go try and log into your bank account. Your bank account has multi-factor authentication. It's sent to your phone. Well, if I can have access to that and see it, then I'll actually be able to defeat that multi-factor authentication and log in. Again, we see data exfiltration. So if I have access to your device, I'm going to exfiltrate pictures, files, notes. Is there anything in pictures that might be sensitive in nature or copyrighted or something that is important to you that you don't want anyone to have that could be discriminating or potentially put someone at harm? And then people can learn movement through geolocation. Where is your phone? They learn to see where you're at all times. That can be kind of unnerving, especially if you're on vacation and people know you're on vacation and not at your house. How are cell phones attacked? Excessive application permissions. So anytime you go to install an app, the app generally will ask you, is it okay for the application to have access to these features? So if I install, I don't know, Candy Crush, and Candy Crush says, we need to access your camera. Well, that seems odd. Why on earth would a game need access to my camera? That doesn't make any sense. So make sure that when you're installing applications on your mobile device, you look and see what that application has access to or what it's authorized to have access to on your phone. Same as any end user license agreement. If you're agreeing for that application to have access to your data, then that could be a bad thing. Phishing emails can absolutely occur still on a mobile device. And malicious websites, same thing, drive-by downloads, things that are attacking mobile device software or mobile device operating systems. We talked about infected apps. So please do not jailbreak your phones. Jailbreaking means putting software on to defeat the purpose, or changing the device settings to defeat the purpose of, those mobile device manufacturers only want authorized software on those phones. So if you defeat that mechanism and you can put any software on those phones against the manufacturer's will, then you could potentially put harmful applications on there without you knowing. So be very cautious when installing specific applications. There are settings in Android that allow you to install applications from an untrusted source from outside of the App Store. Be very cautious on those. I would recommend not to do that. Again, exposed network interfaces can actually attack your phones, and then theft of the device overall. So let's talk about some mitigations, and they're going to be very similar to what we saw. We want to run up-to-date iOS or Android software. Anytime there's an update, update. We want to make sure we're only installing from the trusted App Store. Do not install side channel. Do not install anything on a jailbroken phone. Don't install anything from somewhere that's not coming from the trusted App Store. Make sure we're using our safe web browsing and email use like we talked about earlier. You can run up-to-date antivirus malware if possible. I don't know that there's specific antivirus for the Apple iOS, but I know there is for Android phones. Recognize unexpected multi-factor authentication attempts. If you're, just cruising along one day and all of a sudden your phone blows up and says there's a request to your bank account, that's a signal, and you didn't do that. There's a that's a dead signal to you that someone's trying to log into your bank account. If you're using an application like an authenticator application like the Gmail authenticator, sometimes those are just a push to approve. So you go to log into your website, put your username and password in, it sends the approval to your multi-factor authenticator, and you just click approve. Okay, if you're doing that, that's good. I have seen in the past where someone was getting their multi-factor authenticator app was asking them to approve, and they got tired of seeing it, so they just started clicking approve because they figured it needed it. Well, then the bad actors are obviously able to get access to that account. So any unauthorized multi-factor authentication attempts you want to pay attention to. Make sure we're using strong passwords and PIN codes or biometrics on those devices. Remove any unneeded applications. When you buy an iPhone or an Android device or a Pixel, they come with tons and tons of software on there. And guess what? All that software needs to be updated from time to time. Uninstall it if you don't need it. If you're not using it, remove it. Only use Bluetooth when needed. So if you're not using Bluetooth, turn it off. Don't leave it turned on. And then use caution when using public Wi-Fi. Again, we're going to talk about backing up your data and then taking all those steps, notifying your financial institutions in the event that you may suspect you've been the victim of fraud. Going back up to that Bluetooth really quick, I got in a car once and I was at a dealer, and I turned on the radio and I looked at all the settings, and I noticed that someone's contacts were all in the car. So if you're going to rent a car or you're going to sell a car, make sure to clear out all of your contacts and information from your automobile. Same thing to be said if you're traveling and you are going to use someone else's computer. One, I would recommend, if you're using someone else's computer or a kiosk, or you're somewhere that has a business use computer, don't use your sensitive accounts on those computers. If you do log in anywhere, make sure you log out, and then make sure you completely log out of the session when you're done. Log out of the computer when you're done. Okay. Any questions when it comes to the mobile devices? Okay, got a little bit more to cover. So for your email and web accounts, we want to make sure, like your Gmail and your Hotmail, if anyone still uses Hotmail, your Microsoft email, why do bad actors want this? They want access to attachments, documents, and photos. They want access to your password reset. So if I have access to your Gmail account, I go to log into Chase, and Chase sends me that second form of authentication in an email. Well, now I've got access to your Chase account. They're going to harvest all of your contacts. They want to use your email account to send phishing or spam emails to other individuals coming from you. Because if it comes from you, someone might trust you and they're more likely to open it. They're going to ransom your email, or they're going to blackmail you with information that are in there. They'll do impersonation attempts to make phishing attacks look more real. Again, attack vector for taking over email accounts. They're going to want your username and password. They're going to use phishing and credential harvesting to get it. If you're sharing or sending account information anywhere unsecured, they might get it from there. Any malware that's on a computer or phone, they're going to get your password from there. And then obviously any shoulder surfing that someone's doing. If you're in a public place and someone sees what you're typing in, they can potentially get your password. How do you mitigate and protect your email and webmail accounts? Multi-factor authentication, you see me hit on that many, many, many times. Strong passwords, do not share accounts, and safe computer and mobile phone habits. So really critical in this day and age. I know everyone seems to have a Gmail account or a Microsoft account. There is tons and tons and tons of information in those email accounts about you, about other people. There are pictures, there are sensitive documents. These are treasure troves for bad actors. So not only can they harvest information and launch attacks posing as you, but they can take all of the information out of there and then use it for fraudulent purposes down the road. Any questions when it comes to email or web accounts? Social media accounts. Really want to make sure you're taking steps to protect your social media accounts. The more information that malicious people have about you, the easier it is for them to take advantage of you. They're going to you log into your social media account, and if they have access to it, they're going to do impersonation attacks to fraud other people. There are online predators out there that will then use your social media accounts to do things that we don't want them doing. They use it to distribute other malware and malicious code, and physical location awareness, such as vacations or restaurant check-ins. So if you're using social media, I don't know if people still do it anymore, but I used to see all the time, people will put, oh, I'm at dinner or I'm on vacation or someone enjoying the Bahamas, and that's great. It's nice to share those things. But if you don't know who all is looking at that information, like if you're not really strict with who you're friends with, you've just alerted however many people that you're not at home and your house is open. So to potentially robbery. So protect your social media accounts. Again, strong multi-factor authentication, strong passwords. Don't share your social media accounts with other people. Make sure you review the privacy settings in those social media accounts. Make sure you know what other people can see on you. Absolutely don't accept friend requests if you don't know who it is. Make sure you're only accepting friend requests from people you know in real life. And remember, you can never retract what you post online. You may think you've deleted it, but the internet never forgets. It's there forever. And then I highly recommend, again, this is a Wyatt Scheiding thing, restrict the use of social media by children. If you have not seen the documentary Social Dilemma, I highly encourage you to watch it. That is not a scare tactic in any way, but social media is just a platform that really should not be used by young adults or even especially kids. So I'll pause for just a second on social media and see if there's any specific questions. Just be aware on social media of what you're posting, who can see it, and what it can be used for. All right. So this is something I'm very passionate about, keeping kids safe online. I have 3 boys of my own, 21, 18, and 10. So we have gone through the gambit of making sure they understand what cybersecurity means to them, why things are important, and the activities they do online are need to be kept safe. So what are the common concerns with keeping kids being online? So one, accidental computer damage, physical or software. I can't count the amount of times that I've had a sticky computer screen because my kids' hands were covered in chocolate and they were touching everything, and it takes forever to clean. Or accidental drops or accidental screen breaks or something along those lines. Or maybe they do something to the software or the operating system on accident without knowing. We've got potential damage there. My kids, notorious, installing unwanted programs. They played Minecraft through their teenage years, and they always wanted to install mods. Well, the honest truth is, I don't know what those mods are. I don't know where they come from. I don't know if they're safe. I don't know what's in them. So we want to be really careful with that. Accidental spending of linked credit cards. I go back to the Candy Crush example. You let your 8-year-old play Candy Crush on your phone, and 3 weeks later you find out you got a $300 bill for all the things they clicked on that they said they wanted to buy. Make sure that there's a parental lock on that type of thing so they can't just purchase without your authorization. Obviously, online predators, huge concern, and cyberbullying. So what are some thoughts and mitigations for, if you don't have kids, maybe you have grandkids, maybe you have nieces, nephews, etc. But here's some thoughts. And number one is be involved. Be snoopy. Know what your kids are looking at, know when they're looking at it, know why they're looking at it, especially if they're younger children. I really severely restrict internet access to my 10-year-old. He's only allowed to go to specific websites, and he's only allowed to access that computer in a central location. But just be aware as they grow into teenagers, build that trust, make sure they understand what's going on, and make sure they know that you can grab their phone at any time and see what's going on in their text messages and their web traffic, etc. Make sure, again, I talk about electronic use in a central space, especially for the littles. Educate and set rules. We had expectations. These are the uses for these mobile platforms. These are the uses for social media, and these are the uses for specific websites, and stay within the context of our rules and our family values. Monitor activity across all devices. Again, parental locks are great. Make sure you know how long your kids are online. Make sure what time they're spending online is appropriate. And there are things such as Disney Circle that can help you monitor across multiple devices of what's going on. The Microsoft Family Link is great for that as well. It actually can set time limits. It can tell you what surf habits are going on, what's being visited, et cetera, et cetera. And again, make sure you lock all accounts with parental controls, especially for spending, and restrict that use of social media by younger kids. So, any questions when it comes to keeping kids safe online? Because bad actors can, oh, go ahead.
Just a quick clarification, when you say mods, what do you mean?
Modifications are additional pieces of software that can be used to enhance a program. Typically, those are safe. They're from a trusted manufacturer or provider, but sometimes they're not. And my kids are notorious to come to me and say, hey, I want to install this mod that makes Minecraft do this or makes it look this way from some weird website that I've never seen before. And the answer is absolutely not, because I don't know what that software is doing. So modifications enhance or modify existing software in a specific way.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, have I been compromised? Here's some signs to detect if you've been compromised. So for computers, reduced performance, modified programs like your browsers are acting really funny. Maybe your internet searches are all redirected, or you have toolbars on your browsers that weren't there before. All of a sudden you cannot access files that you used to be able to access. Friends report to you via social media. Friends report to you that social media invites have come from you that you did not send. Maybe online account passwords are not working. So all of a sudden I'm going to my Gmail account and I can't log in anymore. That's weird. So it's a potential that your computer, your mobile device has been compromised. For mobile devices, you might see very high data usage that you can't allocate to anything. Unexplained charges, very severe battery drain on your device. Maybe the device itself heats up because the data usage is or the CPU usage is so high. Unrecognized applications being installed on your computer or your phone. Again, reduced performance and random pop-ups across the board. Also, obvious signs. You had money in your bank account and now you don't. Or your credit card has been frozen for some reason, or you receive alerts that someone has taken out a $300,000 car in your name. Those are dead giveaways of identity theft or potential compromise overall. So what can you do? We talked about this a little bit already. So some common mitigations for computers and mobile: clean it with trusted anti-malware. Make sure that anti-malware is up to date and make sure that it can clean the system. I personally, again, this is just me personally, if there's something that happens on one of the devices at the house, I wipe it to factory default and just start from a clean state. Take it to a professional if you're not sure. Make sure you can take it to Best Buy or whoever can service those if you have someone local that can perform that function for you. Change all of your passwords. So if you're experiencing any situations where either your computer or your mobile phone or maybe your account's been taken over, anywhere you can think that you have a password that uses the same password, go change them. And if it's still a good practice, even if they don't use the same password, change them anyway, because if someone has a keylogger, they may still be able to access that information. Monitor your bank and credit card activity frequently, and then freeze your credit proactively. For your online accounts, make sure you change your passwords where applicable. If there's been a compromise, you may have to work with the vendor to do that. So if your Gmail account's been taken over, you're going to have to contact and submit a fraud complaint or a takeover complaint. And then apply multi-factor authentication anywhere if it is not currently in place. Okay. So where can you keep up to date? There are a million different areas that we can keep up to date. It was hard for me to look on the internet, like where do I trust, what I want to authorize. These are just some general recommendations. But I would recommend, like, there's Brian Krebs. He's a great security researcher. Krebs on Security is great to keep up to date of current news. I have Reuters on here, but honestly, Reuters, Fox News, MSNBC, they all have a technology section that are really good for keeping up to date with cyber industry news and topics. You can go to Microsoft support, you can go to Apple support, and they both have really good information out there of how you can protect your computers, what steps you can take to keep them safe, and give you current news and industry updates of things that you should be aware of. And if you do need to report a cybercrime, so this is not going to be, oh, I have a virus, should I report it to the FBI? No, you should not. I would recommend reporting cybercrime when there's direct impacts to finances or child safety and security. So who can you report that to? You can report it to your local internet service provider, local law enforcement, your local FBI field office, typically only handles large-scale events or child safety or something like that. The Internet Crime Complaint Center takes immediate internet-related criminal complaints, and you can also go to the Federal Trade Commission to report those things. So again, keep that in context. If you have something where your computer's been taken over by a virus and there's no real concern of fraud, you don't need to report that to the FBI. But if someone is in danger, someone is not safe, you're getting cyberbullying complaints, immediately to your local law enforcement. If things escalate or get serious, then FBI. If there's finance loss over a significant amount, again, FBI. And you can always contact your local internet service provider as well and let them know what's going on. Any questions when it comes to reporting? Okay, I see the time is 3 minutes to spare. So remember, please, good security is not a product, it is a practice. And just make sure you practice safe habits throughout your day, keeping the bad actors away from your information and your systems. Happy to take any further questions should there be any.
Okay. Here we go. We have one for you, Wyatt.
All right.
How big of a priority should cybersecurity be to Illinois farmers? What precautions need to be taken from a farm or ag business perspective?
Okay. So I want to try and answer this in a consumer-friendly way, but I'll put my business hat on too. Cybersecurity should be a top concern. And it should be something that's considered in every office, every organization, no matter how big or small. Now, the way in which you apply compensating controls will be different depending on how large your office is. So from my perspective, it's a huge priority. It should be considered at the forefront of all the risks that you have to consider throughout the year. And you can take very practical steps to protect the information on your systems as provided in this presentation. There was a second half to that question. Can you repeat that again?
Yes, it says what precautions need to be taken from a farm or ag business perspective.
So from that perspective, consider where your data exists. Start there, and what data is important to you. And from there, protect those accounts and those systems that support that data. So if you have a single office computer that has all of your information on it for years and years and years, make sure you have a backup of that that's in place and ready to be transferred somewhere it should be needed. If you have multiple computers, multiple offices, or you're a large institution or organization, you want to make sure you're applying broader cybersecurity concepts in a professional sense. Hire a consultant to come in and give you some advice that can tell you what steps to take to protect a larger network. And the best thing I can say is protect your accounts. Make sure that what you use to authenticate to your email, what you use to authenticate to your computers is protected, stays strong, and uses multi-factor authentication or biometrics where available. That's the key. When it comes to plugging computers into other networks, so on and so forth, make sure that you have up-to-date antivirus and firewalls installed.
No. Okay, we have one more question, Wyatt. When trying to eliminate unwanted apps from phone, it always says, are you sure it may affect other apps? How do you know what it may affect if you don't even really know what it is?
It depends on the application. Some applications are part of like the ecosystem of the device itself. So if you're deleting something like the camera app, what it's telling you is that you're not going to be able to take pictures. If you're deleting a file storage or something like that, it's telling you may not be able to store files. And the honest answer to that is you may need to ask someone and reach out. Someone who's technically savvy. I can't answer specific ones off the cuff, but you may need to reach out to someone or do some research online just to see what that application is and just do some Google foo, trying to uninstall this application. Why does it need, this type of stuff? And a quick Google search should be able to answer that question.
Awesome. Thank you, Wyatt. One final thing from you. If you have one takeaway that our attendees should take from your presentation today, what would it be?
Security is not a product, it's a practice. Keep it in the forefront and protect your accounts.
Great, that is great advice. That is a great takeaway. So, okay, I am going to retake over and show my screen to everyone. All right. Thank you, Wyatt. As we wrap up here today, again, a big thank you for sharing your expertise with all of us. Our hope is that everyone will leave this webinar today with some takeaway, whether it's Wyatt's main takeaway or another practice or behavior that you can utilize to help keep your personal and farm business information secure. A few final items just to touch on. Today's webinar was recorded and it will be available as well as Wyatt's handout no later than noon tomorrow on our webpage at farmcreditil.com/minded. It's the same webpage that you would have went to register for today's program. Also, when you close out of the webinar today, a brief 3-question survey will pop up. If you could please take a moment just to complete that, it helps us improve future webinars and ensures that we're providing you the topics and information that you want to hear. And lastly, check out our one final webinar that we have coming up here this next month in our Ag Minded Hour series. It's August 24th. It features our chief appraiser, Kent Reed. He's going to be sharing insights on our land value study that will have just recently been released. You can find additional information and that link to register also on that same web address, farmcreditil.com/minded. Thank you again for spending that hour with us today, and to Wyatt for sharing that expertise. And we hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.